So recently, over the years, Groudon versus Godzilla has actually become a bit more popular. Specifically, Monstrous Godzilla versus Groudon. And believe it or not, this does come from the Monsterverse community literally knowing nothing about Pokemon. I know, shocker, right? And I find this interesting because they always go for the whole size and weight arguments over everything. I know, shocker, still, right? So today on this horrific truth, we're gonna actually talk about why this match not only needs to stop, but it's not close to begin with. And the fact that we're using Monstrous Godzilla instead of something like IDW, Heisei, Showa, or even Marvel Godzilla, which are much more fair fights than the likes of Monsterverse against someone like Groudon, is actually pretty hilarious, considering the fact that Groudon, or even the average Pokemon, something like a Tyranitar, which this is actually going to upscale that video, is capable of one-shotting Godzilla. Now, let's talk about it. How strong is Monsterverse Godzilla, right? And the reason why I think he honestly would get dog walked by a simple Pokemon like Lycanroc or Nidoking. Nidoking's probably worse because, again, the poison and the vast amounts of versatility. And again, I understand what you guys are going to say. Legendary, you don't even like Monster vs. Godzilla. He doesn't have the cleanest track record on your channel. No, I don't. I really don't. I don't like Monsterverse Godzilla, and it's really because of the fans. Y'all kind of ruin it for me because y'all don't even know your own verse. I already talked about the ridiculousness that goes on with the Monsterverse community itself, and again, Monsterverse is probably one of the biggest victims on my channel because, again, you guys do not know how your own verse works. Some of y'all do. I will say this, some of y'all do, but in all honesty, your verse has limitations. They don't beat Showa, they don't beat Heisei, they don't even clear Monster Hunter. And again, it gets to a point where y'all have literally nothing else but utilizing the Superman crossover, which has been confirmed to be non-canon to both the Monsterverse and the original DC timeline. It's an Elseworld story for both characters that takes place very differently in the timeline entirely. So with that being said, Godzilla being able to beat Superman is impressive. Oh, great! It's the feat of the day, despite the fact that this man gets beaten up a lot in his own verse, but it is what it is. And then you have him actually being able to suplex King Shark and stuff like that, one tapping Hawk Girl and Atom Smasher. We get it. Overpowered, great. Standard Godzilla crossover, Dwayne The Rock Johnson levels of the contract, right? And again, non-canon. That was pretty much specifically stated. And I find it funny when people actually use this because it's usually the same people that go for the size and weight arguments. But when we talk about feats, that's the first thing they bring up. Like, why don't y'all bring up Monster versus actual feats when it's actually in the debate? But why do y'all have to go for the non-canon materials and stuff, right? It's like Dragon Ball stands with Xeno Goku when they can't even win with standard Goku. Like, it's just, you guys get what I mean? It's annoying to actually have to deal with. But with that being said, here we are still going to give credit where credit is due. Monsters Godzilla, I would probably say, is around the Dwarf Star levels. I mean, probably stronger, but again, not much into the solar system tiers in all honesty. As again, we would probably need a bit more concrete evidence that the hollow earth is a black hole itself. Not the fact that it mimics one, but the fact that it kind of just, comes around to being one entirely. So with that being said, here you have the fact that the Godzilla at the end of the Monsterverse should be 20 times more powerful, or sorry, 2 times stronger in his base, but has a 20 times energy capacity than before. Then the fact that he also was able to absorb a radiation greater than that of the hollow earth, which he is able to affect. Now, this actually is important because this actually gets him into those star tiers, okay? So, Monster vs. Godzilla being able to affect the hollow earth itself, being able to actually be able to fight against characters who are stronger or probably just as equal to the hollow earth's energy capacity, mind you. Characters like Shimo, King Ghidorah, and even Kong as well, who's actually able to go through the hollow earth. And the funny part is they all have a biological factor that contributes to this, okay? So with Godzilla not only using his atomic breath to be able to punch through not only the Earth's crust, but the hollow Earth membrane, then also the hollow Earth's crust to reach where Kong is, I think should say a lot about how powerful he is. Literally punching through 3 layers of the Earth. Monstrous Earth, I should say. And then we also have the fact that, again, the hollow Earth has been compared to gamma rays, pulsars, and quasars and stuff like that, where these things can only be found in supermassive black holes and everything. But again, we have to go to the novelization, which I know some people don't bother reading for some reason, where it actually is compared to black holes. But again, they pretty much bypass it via a biological component. So they're not explicitly tanking it, they're just simply adapted to it. So with that being said, here you have the fact that Godzilla and the rest of the monsterverse as well are pretty much around the star levels, if not lower. So until they actually get more to put them on those solar system tiers, I think star level, if not dwarf star level, is pretty much consistent. Now, let's move on to Groudon. And this is going to be a very fun one, in my opinion. And this is going to be because Groudon would one-shot a large majority, if not the entirety of the Monsterverse. You see, he would scale above the basic, everyday Pokemon. You know, he would scale above the likes of Gothitelle, Gardevoir, and even some of the lesser legendaries who would one-shot those Pokemon. So he's able to one-shot Pokemon that are able to one-shot, you know, standard Pokemon. You might say legendary. Okay, so what is the standard Pokemon, you know, capable of doing? Oh, well, I'm so glad you asked. So let's talk about Gothitelle, right? Gothitelle, in her Pokédex entries, is confirmed to have the psychic power to distort starry skies. So this means she's able to bend entire stars to her will. Multiple, mind you, because it says starry skies, all right? Meaning that she's able to bend multiple stars to basically distort them, which is basically like to twist or disfigure. Excuse me, I'm a little dehydrated right now. Matter of fact, hold on a minute. Let me take a sip of this water. Like I said earlier, being able to distort and twist multiple stars would put Gothitelle at a multi-solar system level. And this is important because, again, Groudon would scale above those who would one-shot them, which is a 10 times difference. Meaning the likes of Groudon is one-shotting multi-solar system level beings. And one-shotting beings who could one-shot them. Meaning he would likely be a 20 times multiplier when it comes to Pokemon, or at least when it comes to the legendary classes of Pokemon. As again, beings like Registeel, Regirock, the legendary birds, and the legendary dogs would all pretty much exist in that domain of power. Now, let's move on to Groudon's actual feats, right? Groudon is known as the Pokemon who raised the entire continent. And hear me out, he is also able to basically separate them. Yeah, Pokemon had its own little Pangea, and Groudon was responsible for this. You know, something that Mutual Prime can't even do without affecting tectonic plates. Yeah, Groudon did this casually via his own power. Like, casually. When Arceus said, hey, we're gonna need some new lands around here, so I need you and Regigigas to hurry up and get to work. Alright, bet. And so, just like that, you have the fact that Groudon separated multiple continents. Then you also have the fact that he's able to withstand attacks from Latios and Latias quite casually. Again, the same Pokemon that would one-shot multi-solar system level beings quite casually. And Groudon just no-sells him like it's nothing. However, let's get into the higher tiers of legendary scaling, where we have characters like Kyogre, Rayquaza, and Kyurem. See, these Pokemon all scale to each other to a certain degree. Groudon and Kyogre obviously would scale to each other, and they are also capable of battling against Rayquaza. Even though it's a 2v1, they are not one-shotted by Rayquaza, which is very important here. Now, this is important because Rayquaza was able to one-shot Kyurem with that same Hyper Beam. Kyurem is actually confirmed to be the strongest dragon Pokemon on Earth, confirmed by the Village of Elders, who specialize in dragon typing. So I think she's pretty legit here when it comes down to it. Then you also have the fact that if you guys want, you guys can go ahead. It's a 3-year-old video, so you can't say I'm wrong about this here when I say Rayquaza not only manhandled, but one-shotted Kyurem. Now, this is actually important because Kyurem being the strongest dragon type on Earth, meaning, Rayquaza pretty much dog walked the supposed strongest dragon type on Earth, right? Means that he would actually scale above the likes of 50% Zygarde, who is a dragon ground type. Now, 100% Zygarde versus Kyurem, probably debatable. But again, Kyurem does have the elemental advantage, especially with his ice typing, okay? So, Kyurem scaling above Zygarde in terms of like raw physical power and probably even like other forms of strength and stuff like that does make the most sense and everything, with the fact that not only is 50% Zygarde literally equal to the conceptual Pokemons of life and death. Oh yeah, I've already discussed this before. Pokemon do have concepts to maintain and everything, so that's pretty important. And with him scaling above that pretty easily, I think it's I think it's pretty safe to say that he would actually be around those outer versal levels or tiers. So, Kyurem being above a guy who's above the concepts of life and death is pretty simple, and I think pretty self-explanatory, right? Then you also have the fact that 50% Zygarde was able to check Ultra Necromata after she was beating up, Solgaleo quite casually. Zygarde at his 50% state just simply steps in and straight up smacks her away from Solgaleo so she doesn't consume him again, because at that point it probably would have been murder. And keep in mind, before this, base Necromata would have had already absorbed the entire light of Ultra Space, which is an infinite multiverse on its own. So not only would Groudon be superior to these Pokemon, but he would be able to manhandle and one-shot these entities. I find that crazy, right? So you have the fact that Groudon would scale above the likes of Kyurem, who scales above the likes of Xerneas. Sorry, not Xerneas. Well, technically he does. 50% Zygarde, who upscales the concepts of life and death, being Xerneas and Yveltal, who also upscale the average Pokemon. Alright? Is that hard to comprehend? So we got this, right? Okay. So with that being said, with the fact that there's such a difference in power gap here, meaning that a Gothitelle, which performs multi-solar systems, gets one-shotted by something like Xerneas, Yveltal, or Entei, which would make them 10 times stronger than the likes of these Pokemon. Keep in mind, we're not talking about trained Pokemon either. We're talking about average, everyday Pokemon that's walking around. They're going to say, oh, why isn't the Earth destroyed and all that? Again, Pokemon Earth is more durable than you think. Plus, it has multiple layers to it, such as beings or areas that contain interdimensional gateways. Alright, to like other realities and stuff like that. The Pokemon Earth is very complex. Like, you can consider the Earth itself as its own little mini multiverse, if you will, especially during the game's lore and stuff like that. But again, that actually should do it all for today, you guys. Groudon would absolutely one-shot and just curb stomp Monstrous Godzilla. So be sure to comment down below like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And in all honesty, this match needs to stop. It's not close, and no amount of size and weight is going to help Godzilla win this. Peace.